Chris is back with the tin, baby. Let's go.
What's up, big dog? I'm not in my work premises. It's good to be back and for me to have a drink.
I wish I could say the same. Well, Chris, I was having a bit of a turbulent week last week in regards to my SuperCoach score, but I'm just going to start gloating, okay? I think it's just time for me to finally put my ego to the front of this podcast and Mr. CEO, or better known as the paper boy or the coffee order boy, Reece Walsh. I was shitting bricks with Nicko Hynes. I didn't have a VC, and I believe you probably had an armband on Nicko Hynes, but I was like, not doing it. He's my nemesis for the rest of the season. I can't. He's betrayed me too many times. And I decided to put the armband on Reece Walsh. And then, my God, he just popped off left, right, and center. I did have to chuck out a typical Ryan Firehawk jinx, 1 or 2 in the group chat to bump up at the score a little bit. But my God, Reece Walsh saved my week, and a couple other boys popped off as well. But I'm back, Chris. I'm back in the top 1%, and that's all I care about. I scored 1,500. I ranked 2,322. Your boy is back.
Well done, my man. Look, it takes big balls, to captain Reece Walsh. So, you deserve all the kudos, And I know you're going to probably be absolutely insufferable this week on the pod, but, you're allowed to be because you are the king and you scored the best out of all of us in the group and all the podcasters this week. Yeah.
I think that if I scored better than yourself and Adam, does that just Uno Reverso and I can just switch our ranks over? Is that how it works?
No, I think you have to have a couple of more good scores. As the great philosopher Shaquille O'Neal once said, excellence is not an act, it's a habit, my friend.
How did you go?
Oh, wow, Ryan, do I have a nightmare fuel story for you? We probably should call it my breakup with Drinky. So, Kid Blue Eyes, we started off pretty well last week, like you, Dylan Edwards, he scored 119. Harry Grant, he got absolutely bailed out with that last-minute dummy try out of half for 86. And then Prince Nicko, he's no longer Timo Cleary. He is Prince Nicko now. My captain, he went up for 145, and I was thinking, my God, sweet. All my players are killing it. I could be on for a huge score, Ryan. And then I got greedy. Like in the corner of my eye, I saw Tom Trbojevic, him with his malformed hamstrings. And, I saw his fixtures calling my name. And so I said to Drinky, I'm sorry, it's not me, it's you. But my God, when he scored in the 3rd minute against the Knights, I knew I made a big mistake. And then he crept over 100 and I was angry. And I was like, why are you doing this to me, Drinky? I've never wanted to reverse a trade more in my life. And then when he scored his final try, I just realized, Drinky is love and Drinky is life. And so, yeah, he's now a fond memory. No, I'm just kidding, Ryan. I'm still fucking angry and I hope he gets kicked in the nuts against the Tigers next week. But, anyways, I did pretty well. I scored 1490 and Kid Blue Eyes, we went up another 100 spots to 724. But yeah, no, it was a good week for a lot of players, like all the popular captains, Nicko, Lomax, Drinky, they all scored 120 plus. So yeah, hopefully that, the big scores continue in round 25 this week.
Yeah. And mate, we nailed it on the head last week. If you get those captaincy armbands right, particularly like a lot of us are getting a free loop with the AE being our last guy on the bench. Yeah, a lot of those guys are now coming good, finally. And that's what's differentiating a lot of these people. Like both of us would have scored, or it says on my screen, the top 3% of all super coaches from last week. That's like unreal. So yeah, as we said last week, those armbands so important. And head-to-head matchups, I was like sweating bullets all week. I was doing really well, and then all of a sudden, my AE for both of us, mine was just not like mine was Garrick, which really screwed me over. I was hoping it was going to be a Sarko, and again, that update between the AE dropping out and the Sarko staying in, that was the difference between me and one of my top 4 finishers for another league. But our Tribot series, my friend, I managed to pull through. So fantastic. I'm versing you this week. Is that correct?
Yes. And I'm going to recommend that you be you captain Jermaine Osaka this week. Actually, even better. I forgot about him. You're totally right, Ryan. Captain Lawson. He'll go. Hopefully, he goes big for you. Hopefully, but actually, you actually bring on a really, really good point, actually, Ryan, because funnily enough, this week a lot of people vice captained Nicko, but the problem was that a lot of players that are Supercoach relevant all played before Nicko did. And I found a lot of people actually suddenly, all of a sudden, after Nicko went big, they didn't have a player to loop. And they ended up having to, in order to loop, they had to either not play like a really good Supercoach player. Like, for example, I know a few players who had to, or no, a few people who had to not play either Terrell May or Payne Haas, and a lot of them didn't play Terrell May as a result, and therefore they just missed out on these 81 or 88 points last week. So just another tip for whoever you choose as your vice captain, make sure that you do have someone to loop later on if that player goes big, and if not, probably don't put the VC on that player as well.
Yeah. Great shout. Because again, that would be devastating. And imagine just having to burn a trade when we're so thin on trades, potentially to do that as well. Like, that's pretty.
Yeah, that's the other option that you can do. Yeah, you can trade somebody out and nuff them out and then play them as a result. But even last week, that was actually quite difficult to do for a lot of players, a lot of coaches, and that's why they just had to sit someone out. Exactly.
Yeah. So now, Chris, it's going to be interesting because we talked last week in a bit of banter about players of difference on our head-to-head matchup, and I'm about to go into our game here, and I think there's about 5 players who are going to be of relevance, and I'm really looking forward to some of those guys popping off. And according to my screen, it's Hudson Young for me. I think you got rid of Asako.
No, I still have Asako. He's on my bench at the moment. That's why he's playing.
Yeah, Brino and Walsh. So there's not many guys, and if I do pull my last trade for a specific guy who is very, very vibey, and you have an inkling who that is, that's going to be the difference, man. It's going to be so, so close. So I'm really looking forward to having that head-to-head matchup with you, and then it's probably going to be the grand final matchup between the GOAT, the king of Supercoach, Mr. Adam Prove. So very, very looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, like somehow, like, or some way, you and I probably because we actually just talk every week, you and I have ended up with actually very similar players, very similar teams. And it's like you said, we've only got like 5 players, and it really depends on these guys pop off. And that's the thing, I think I've got 1 trade left. How many trades do you have left?
If I make the trade, I'll have
you and I both have 1. I think the question is whether or not you do it this week to make sure you win, or whether, because if you do it this week, then next week in your finals, you don't have a player that you might want just to actually win. And that's the thing you have to kind of trade off or think about as well. So for anybody who's watching and they're in there, I guess, do we call this the prelim finals? The one before the grand final.
Yeah, I guess so.
Have a look at the other two teams that you could potentially be versing next week if you do win this week, and have a look and see if you want to trade this week, or be better off making your trades next week. And that would be your thinking.
Well, I think like a big decision is, have you got Drinkwater? Because that's the round 26. So I think if you do have Drinkwater in your team, you almost have to hold, because you want to trade him out if you haven't done that already, like yourself. That's a huge variable. And like this week, the Sharks, like you've got guys like Nicko Hynes, or maybe people have a random like Talakai, or obviously Nikora might be having to go out now as well for people who held him. A couple other Supercoach relevant players like McInnes tore his ACL as well. So guys like that, Blake Brayley, probably missing a couple there as well. Ronnie Mulatalo. So definitely some guys in those Supercoach relevant positions and players on the buy. So a lot of people probably going to pull the trigger for maybe 1 trade this week, just even potentially
that's
make
exactly
up numbers.
True. Yeah, but as always, if you're low on trades, the number 1 rule on this podcast is if you've got 18, just play 18 players. And if you've only got 1 trade, like Ryan and myself, do your best to
vibes, unless it's vibes. So, Chris, I reckon we go on a TLT, and again, I'm putting the ego on the line here because I've been calling Daniel Tupou the pod to be picking up, and again, he popped off. So, where's my crown? Need to get rid of the hat. Need to get the crown on, because I've been on fire recently.
It's true. Like, credit where credit's due. You said for the last 2 weeks, any love for that Daniel Tupou, and I was kind of, umming and ahhing actually, and I was like, yeah, why not if you want to, but Sammy Walker to him is just a cheat code. He just they keep kicking it to him in the air and he just keeps catching for tries. But he's out this week actually, and Junior Tupo's in. So if you're thinking about trading him in, and I guess we'll talk about Ruben Garrick replacements in a moment as well. Yeah, it's not a trade in this week, but he does play Souths in the last round, against, and he'll probably be playing against Ty Munro, who's not a noted aerial specialist either. So maybe worth trading in round 27, really.
Yeah. And besides the Titans, who is probably the team that is struggling the most?
I think it would be the Bunnies and Parramatta, really. I think Parramatta have
over the night.
They've kept their deep. They're quite tight on their defense and they've been quite good with it. But at the same time, same as the Bunnies, they were quite spirited last week. In making sure. I think they're keen not on winning the wooden spoon. I think the Titans probably are going to win it now.
Yep.
Really. Actually, speaking of wooden spoon, I actually saw a really interesting stat. This is the first year since 2021 since the Tigers had a mathematical chance of winning the spoon.
For you, I'm ecstatic, mate. For you, I'm very ecstatic.
I think we're actually mathematically a chance for making the finals. Anyways, back to SuperCoach. I think the people you still want to play, these teams you want to still target are obviously Bunnies, Para, and probably the other team. I think this is who you really want me to talk about. The Newcastle Knights. They have booked their flights to Bali already.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've been holding Bradman Best in draft just to play the double nuff on the bench and have Bradman Best as my AE. No, the strategy is definitely changing this week. Bradman Best is just not getting the same ball, especially with Sharp and Ponga not there. Yeah, as you said, mate, they're gone to Bali. They're probably already 1 foot over the line there. So definitely, I reckon that's probably the best matchup. And tell you what, I think if SuperCoach relevant as well, West Tigers. I'm telling you, Adam Dewey and Tylan May for centre wing options, very potty, well, especially Tylan May. Base and power is fantastic. But yeah, Dewey and Tylan May, love that.
Well, since we're talking about it, let's just talk about Ruben Garrick replacements. He's out for the season now because of his shoulder. I think he's getting a reconstruction confirmed literally today. Yeah, Adam Dewey, he's 646k and he's the number one most traded in the top 10%. Back-to-back tons. 3-game average of 87. I watched the game last week and he just touched the ball every single play. He goal kicks, runs the ball, good at tackle busting, offloads as well, and it's the fixtures. It's Newcastle it's Cowboys this week at home, Canberra away, which is probably a shitty game for them. And then Gold Coast Titans at home, which could be just anything. He honestly could score 2 more hundreds in round 27. You probably honestly captain, and you probably won't. You probably captain Teddy against the Bunnies, but he is one. New Zealand Warriors, they have a great draw. They're Gold Coast this week, Para, and then Manly. Yes, he's a little bit cheaper than Adam Dewey. He's versing, is it Jalen de Groot? Yeah, he probably can still see Mulatalo Shadow. I was going to recommend Tane Tuapiki, but he can't anymore because he's been dropped actually this week. CNK's back at fullback. Broncos, they have a good draw. So, yeah, Knights this week, they're going to go massive. So literally anybody in their backline is worth a punt, whether that be Gatoni Staggs, Josiah Karapani, Mr. Japan, Shibasaki, or Dean Mariner, and then there's a couple of St. George Dragon Smokies as well that you might want to fill us up on, Ryan, who might be good Ruben Garrick replacements. You talk to me about them and I'll give you my thoughts on them.
There's only one, mate, and it's just vibes. And I'm telling you, he had his warm-up week, but the money man, he's back. He's back. He's healthy. He's ready to run right, and he's going to be popping off. And I'm leaking my trade right now. Christian Tuipulotu could be my centre wing replacement. Just pure vibes. I got an inkling that he's just going to absolutely pop off and get 100 points. That's my Daniel Tupou for this week. That's the money man. It has to happen.
Yeah, well, he had a successful return last week. He scored 43. Which is pretty good. 33 in base as well. For somebody who didn't score, the issue was that the ball stopped at Max Feguy who won't pass the ball. And he scored all the tries, and he turned up himself. So he's also another kind of smoky. It's hard to know. There's actually so many good players this week that, could go massive, as we talked about earlier. And I think you're right. I mean, they play Souths, Manly, both teams which big possible big scores, and Penrith. Hard to know. I think Penrith. If they want to try to get that top four, they may not rest any players at all. But if they rest all their stars, they could also go big as well. Yeah. And obviously as well as with,
100%.
as NRL physio would say, hey, it's the first 2 weeks that you're still at risk of re-injuring your hamstring. I know he did come back in New South Wales Cup, so technically this is his 3rd game, I think. But I think that risk is still there.
Correct.
So.
That's the vibes, mate. I agree with you 100%. I was actually going to mention that as well. He's had his 2 weeks. He's warmed up. The confidence now is there. I think Tuipulotu is definitely absolute smoky pod that could put you into the next stratosphere. The Gutherino with the money, man, it's meant to happen. The vibe is there.
But just ask yourself, Ryan, if he gets injured and you have him and Lawson on, in your CT dubs, how will you feel without any trades,
Lawson's coming back.
I got a Hubner instead. He's probably safer.
Yeah. Couldn't do it. Talking about weaker teams, and again, I'm going to refer here as well to Manly. Okay, they've just looked like in dire straits as well. Boys are injured everywhere. 2 proven guns in Trebojevic and Garrick, both out, as in Jake, not Tommy. They're already halfway out the door as well. I think their season's cooked. The Daly Cherry Evans saga is obviously not helping anyone there. Potentially they might want to rally around him, but I think they're just lacking troops, which then puts me to the thing about back to Teamless Tuesday with Trey Fuller getting named at number 14 and not starting at centre. What's your thoughts? I mean, not fullback and Hammer not getting put at centre. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's hard. I really don't know what to think about Manly. It's all those factors that you talked about, obviously, but it just makes no sense to me. Like last week, it'd be a simple case of them just dropping the ball. They're just not concentrating. I mean, they look great after 30 seconds when when Cooler went through, and just 10 tackle busts, and scored that try in 30 seconds. But then they didn't score a single point afterwards. They're just so good on paper. It's so hard to not to back them. Do you know what I'm saying? And now that it's your season's truly in that line. This is your, they don't win this game, they cannot make finals. I think is my understanding. So
yep.
I don't know what to think. Really. Who do they play this week again?
You were saying that.
Yeah, I thought earlier.
Trey Fuller.
Yeah.
That's a bit disappointing for him because he had such a good game.
Yeah,
so.
It would have been good as well, because he'd be, he's probably, under waivers for a lot of, draft head-to-heads this week, and you could have picked him up and then played him as an AE, in a sense to pick up 2 fullback scores. But yeah, no, it's disappointing. I would much rather, if you were going to go jump on a Finns player, I'd probably think about either Hammer or Jake Averillo. They're much more better players who are more likely to score high, and also they do play the Titans next week as well. So that would be really good for your head-to-head final, whether it be in draft or in Classic.
Yep. Also worthy to note that I thought Matty Nicholson would be making an appearance for the Raiders. Did not get put on the extended bench either. So that makes me wonder, maybe round 27 then?
Yeah, possible. And did Savelio Tamale also make it onto the extended or not? I think he's not. I think they've just named him 1 to 17 this week.
Yeah,
so that bodes really well for Zach Hosking as well, who probably and Joey Taps this week against Penrith. They'll probably play extended minutes. This week I'm gonna play Joey Taps. I think he's gonna play 60 minutes against Penrith as opposed to his usual 45, 50. And hopefully he puts a big score in this week. Yeah, and hopefully that will help me prevail. Yeah, he's Ryan.
Yeah. Well, I think, as you said, mate, versus the Panthers, they're going to need a big game from him. So, 100% great shout there, and very sad that I don't have him myself. Some other boys. Obviously, you mentioned Pappenhausen. He's on the extended bench, and I made the call last week. If you're a proven gun and you're on the extended bench, in other words, Latrell Mitchell, for example, I think Pappenhausen plays. What's your thoughts there?
I hope he does play. For anybody who has Cam Munster, he wasn't bad last week at fullback. It's just there really wasn't any connection between Jonah Peasant and him at all, and I didn't feel like he seemed to pick the ball up at second receiver, which is what you want as fullback. So I hope Pappy comes back, and that will be really, really great because they play the Bulldogs this week, and the Bulldogs also they're in dire straits. Ever since Lockie Galvin got traded over. So I think that if you're a Pappy owner, I think, and he starts, expect a big score. If Munster moves to 5'8", expect a big score. If you're thinking about trading Harry Grant as well, that's not a bad move. I can understand people maybe thinking of trading a Connor Watson or Cam McInnes, who's done his ACL, but just letting people know that Connor Watson is actually starting this week instead of Benny Arnoscu. So I think it might be just back to normal for the Roosters.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that Roosters team right now, and bloody hell, they're a strong-looking team. And I think they're going to make a really late run, especially if they get Tupou back healthy. Obviously, with that concussion, you never know with lingering symptoms. They've just got depth around the park too, and they've blooded all those young fellas. So it's next man up mentality, unlike some other teams who just got no depth. So yeah, Roosters, scary, scary thoughts. Is there anyone else you want to talk about for team lists?
No, not particularly that I can recall at the top of my head at the moment.
Yeah, I think the only one else as well that Vilea as well from the Cowboys, he's back into the centres with Laybut off the bench. So I guess if you're a Drinky owner as well with those conversions, as we mentioned previously, that's going to be against the Tigers. That's pretty much do or die for the Tigers as well. So both teams with SuperCoach relevant players with potential armband on maybe even a couple of them as well. Drinkwater, expect a big game. Yeah. Shame you don't own them anymore, mate. Now, Chris, in the green room, you mentioned briefly about some hot topic you wanted to go over. I think this is the appropriate time to do Chris's new semi-segment of what's random that we can talk about on SuperCoach.
Well, I was scrolling through one of my favorite social medias, Discord, and I found this chart that was on how it was called a penalty count. It's like, how favored are you? How much do the refs actually hate your team, really? And are you one of the teams that are beloved by your refs, really? And I was kind of surprised. I did have I will say as well, I did fact check this with NRL.com and give or take just a couple of tries here and there. I suspect whoever created this chart, like, it could have been done on I think like a Saturday before some of the teams played last week, but it's pretty spot on. So yeah. So basically, the team that actually receives the most penalties is actually the Sharks, and they actually receive 30 more penalties than they've given away. And some of the teams that you think that would be, they always receive penalties, and one team that you've complained about recently, Ryan, the Panthers, they actually have received 7 less penalties than they've given away. So the worst team's actually the Broncos. They've given away 25 more penalties than they've received, and they're actually the second most penalised team behind the Bulldogs at 136. Which makes sense, because everybody hates the Bulldogs. It's for the, they deserve it, really.
It's interesting that you say that with the Doggies, though, because you think a top 4 team fighting for number 2, really, and they've been up the top all year. They've got a for and against of 375. So fantastic defense. Do you think? Well, hang on, are they the best defense in the league? They're the best defense in the league at 366 against. So the best defense, but gives away the most penalties. Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you reckon they're just sort of testing out the ref?
Yeah, 100%. It's much like I think they model themselves off the Melbourne Storm. That is, tackle, hold on for as long as possible. I guess see what you can get away with. Really test that ref, and then if you give away a penalty, back your defense. And which they have done. Which makes a lot of sense. See what you can get away with. It's actually quite smart. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm going to say that probably a team that would be up there, it gives away the most penalties. I'm going to say it's the Titans.
No,
100%.
not at all. Actually, they actually give away the second least amount of penalties. Yeah,
Okay, I should rephrase. Other way around. They get no rub of the green. Is that
no,
correct?
that's also not correct. That would actually be the Raiders. So basically, the Raiders have the least. They've received 98 penalties. By comparison, the Titans have received 119. So that's an extra 21. So some of the teams that have actually received less penalties as well than the Titans would be the Finns, the Cowboys, the Panthers, the Knights, the Storm as well, and also the Broncos and Roosters. So it's not so much. Interestingly, a lot of the teams which are doing well and are in the top 8, they're actually not receiving that many penalties at all. And some of the teams that are actually in the top, in the top 8, actually are receiving the most penalties, specifically the Bulldogs and the Broncos. Really.
That is bullshit. There's probably a referee running in front of Jaden Campbell right now, not blowing penalties. So.
Like, for example, right? Like, in terms of the top 8, in terms of top 8 teams that have received the most penalties for and against, right? It's the Sharks, Warriors, Dragons, Finns, Titans, Tigers, Eels, and Rabbitohs. So technically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Six of the teams that received the most for and against actually aren't even in the top 8. It's almost as if they penalise the good teams better because they're very aware of the bias, the NRL teams. Yeah. So yeah.
I don't know how you're going to outdo yourself next week. What's the next random thing we can talk about? That's really interesting. And again, we all have bias for our teams. And as a member for the Gold Coast Titans, I feel like they never, ever get a call. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe I'm just like, I'm there, I'm looking, I'm like, why aren't you calling it? They just don't call it. Maybe that's the issue.
Yeah, maybe it's that, or maybe they're just a shit team.
Yes. Yes.
But speaking of not shit players, I want to talk about Reece Walsh this week as well, because we probably should talk a bit about players that could actually help you win your head to head. Yeah, so 753k, number 4 trade in top 10, and I can't afford him, so I'm quite scared actually. 155 on the weekend. We said earlier, plays against the Knights. Drinky put up 150 again, so it could be spin absolute massacre. I think he's an absolute buy, Ryan, just with the goal kicking. He had 28 points just in goal kicking, and now he plays Newcastle, then the Cows, and then Melbourne. They might be resting, and in my opinion, I think he's in a new role as well. He just gets the ball at that second receiver, accelerates at the 2RF center, drags him in, and he just pops it off to Scatoni Stags, for an easy line breaks like forwards. Like, how did you think he looked last week?
Mate, let alone the analytics of the score he's been getting, or the past 2 out of the past 3 weeks, but eye test wise, the role has changed. He looks more balanced, and again, he's going to bully teams with like Newcastle is a prime example. He's going to bully them, and it's going to be really, really good to see. In terms of the goal kicking, yes, obviously going to boost him up about 20 points as well every single time, and the 40-20s, he's got everything. He's literally the complete package. And I think that's why he's so frustrating to watch, because he's got this in him. But if he can do this 8 out of 10 games, he'd be almost the best player in the league. And that's obviously why Billy Slater froths him so much. I just got Laura absolutely chatting away back here when she got beaten in a head-to-head matchup to me last week, actually. So, bye-bye. Daddy goes home. So, yeah. So, Reece Walsh, eye test, fantastic. So happy I jumped on. Thank you, Adam. You finally gave me some good advice after 3 years of really screwing me over in some trades. But he's an armband every single week. And I think the Melbourne Storm in round 27, as you mentioned, potential restings, I can almost guarantee if they win either this week or next week, they're resting because they're guaranteed top 4. I think they're just going to say, hey, we don't care where we are in the top 4 as long as we got that second chance, because they know they can beat anyone. I think they'd rather be going into that first round of the finals fresh, especially with some of those boys in that team. Yeah. If they win one of the next 2 weeks, all guaranteed top 4, for example, Warriors lose, yeah, they'll be there.
Yeah. Look, I think I totally agree with your assessment. I think he definitely looked more of Reece Lightning than roller coaster Reece, really. So yeah, I think there's a very good chance that he will absolutely kill it. And as you said earlier, consistency has always been his issue. He's just so inconsistent. He lost a bit of form at the beginning of the year or so, but now that Reynolds, Mam, they're out. I think in many ways he's just making the same plays, actually, funnily enough, in the early rounds, but just isn't dropping the ball. So, super pleased for him. Yeah. And so anybody's thinking about,
Yep.
trading, I can't tell you who to trade out actually for Reece Walsh, but I think you should have him in your team if you've got some trades and you've got the money to buy him.
If you have Turbo out Walsh in.
Yeah.
I think that's easy.
If you don't want Walsh,
Yeah.
then I should also think that you should consider Sammy Walker, who's now 749K. He's averaging 80. We talked about him last week, Ryan. A lot of people were going to jump on him probably this week because, he plays Parramatta, then Melbourne, and then Souths. Like, the ball's just on a string for him. He even scored 74 against the Dogs, who have the best defense, And as I said, I don't know who you sell him for. I said Nicko last week, and I think I still stand by that. Just because Nicko's on the bye this week, you get 3 games versus 2. But I'm not sure that. Yeah, I think you said you have to sell Turbo or something like that because I don't think you can sell Drinky just yet against the Tigers, and also I'm not sure that you can sell Edwards, Teddy, or Cleary either.
Yeah. Laura's just doing some weird stuff in the background. I think Sam Walker with no Daniel Tupou this week is definitely going to affect him and his score. Because, you think about the Xavier coach cheat code with Cameron Munster, it's 2-2 with Sam Walker and Daniel Tupou. With Tupou out, that does worry me slightly. What about you think about that?
I mean, there's always a silver lining. Do you know what I'm saying? People who hold Mark Nwanga-Nitawaze, you can put the VC on him, my friends. It's not like there's only one tall winger that they can kick the ball to and they can catch the ball. So, but I guess you're right in many ways because last few weeks he's getting 2 try assists off Daniel Tupou, but it could be like you said earlier. Hey, next man up mentality. I don't know how tall Junior Tupou is.
Yeah.
Maybe he's also very good at catching the ball as well. Off kicks.
Yeah. Oh, Tupou Junior. Sorry, Daniel Tupou. He's cheat code. Junior Tupou's. He's the TV version. Let's be honest.
I don't even know who he is. I won't lie.
Still a good. Wait, Timu has some good products, mate. Just he's not Lululemon. It's just what it is. I'm a little bit annoyed because I'm just going through the top scores from round 24. And Katoni, you sort of briefly mentioned him before as a Garrick replacement. I was this close to trading him in for Herbie. And in hindsight, that would have been a fantastic play. And I would have been interesting where I could have been in the past 2 weeks because he's been absolutely killing it. And I think, again, circling back to Reece Walsh, Katoni and him is just looking so dynamic. And I'm starting to think, obviously, Reynolds is really important to the Broncos with Mam out, obviously. But do you think the Broncos have too many cooks in the kitchen?
100%. We said that. I said this last week. I think that when you have to be a leader in your team and there's, not other people that you can depend on, you're going to stand up. It's very just basic psychology. It's the bystander effect for sure. It's kind of like when something bad happens in the subway, nobody does anything. But when you're standing just alone in the railway station, you see somebody getting mugged, you're actually going to be more likely to do something about it because you're the only one there. And if you don't do something, a travesty occurs in many ways. And so, yeah, I think Katoni Staggs is. I'm obviously I'm sad that you didn't get on him, but and this year's been a lot more consistent as well. But I think it's always hard to buy like a player who is always so try reliant, and doesn't have goal kicking at all, and doesn't have the world's most massive base. But given the fixtures, I think that it doesn't matter that you didn't get on last week. I think you can get on him instead, instead of Tuipulotu. I actually think that any of the backline for the Broncos probably minus Dean Mariner, just because he hasn't been touching the ball that much as well, would probably be better than Christian Tuipulotu if I was being honest, Ryan, for you.
the vibes, but yeah, Katoni, he's so good to watch live as well. And the Newcastle Knights. So Katoni Staggs is right
Yes.
centre, correct? That means he's up against Bradman
Who is
Best, I
quite a good
believe.
defensive centre, but at the same time, he's also against Greg
Yeah.
Marshu as well. So I'm pretty sure Greg Marshu cancels Bradman Best out. That's why I'm expecting a try feast. For Dean Mariner this week. I'm going to play him against Adam, who I'm playing against in draft head to head this week. Yeah,
I like that. That's smoky. Yeah, Katoni. But I think also with Katoni Staggs, if Walshy needs a break from kicking, he's actually going to be the next man
yes,
up
he
as
would.
well.
Yeah,
He's kicked them many, many times. So I actually kind of rate him for like obviously a sort of a more of a potty move. He's probably one of the guys I'd definitely be looking at. And if he's in your draft and he's available, I'd be getting him. I'd be putting a waiver claim for sure. Because for me personally, I reckon it's him, like pods, obviously. Him, I would also probably say Tuapolotu, just because obviously everyone's scared of the hamstrings, and Mr. Rocks and Diamonds, analytic lord Xavier Coates. Even though they're versing someone hard, he's still a cheat code. And again, he's looking fresh, he's looking healthy. Potentially could go 100 every single week, and he's getting that high 80s now, which is great
yeah.
to see. Who do you reckon's like top 3 center wing pods then?
Oh, just for this week or just for the run home?
Yeah, this week because there's so many shit tunes
Yeah.
every week.
No,
So many
I
injuries.
honestly, I think we've talked about the ones that I think that are the top three. I think it has to be Adam Dewey. I think, against Queensland,
Oh
not
yeah,
Queensland Cowboys. It
course.
has to be
Pacific pod now.
RTS, against Jalen the group. And then pretty much, yeah, any of the Broncos players is what I would say. I think they're your main three. Somebody who was talked about as maybe being a pod as well. I don't know if we talked about this last week, but Stephen Crichton. He looked really good actually straight away because I think he set up Tanuli and Tanala, the right winger for the Bulldogs for the first try last week. But he's still sweeping. He's playing that fullback role in attack, and then Connor Tracy's kind of playing the right centre for some reason still. But he just hasn't been consistent. He scored 100 2 weeks ago, but last week I think he only scored 40. So it's a bit of concern at the moment. So I probably back off the Bulldogs, just given that they're in disarray. Unless they find form really, really quickly, I probably wouldn't recommend that you jump on him.
Yeah, that's fair. And as you're talking, I'm just sad because I'm 20k off from Adam Dewey. I'm 20k off from Katoni Staggs. And I was like 30k off from Daniel Tupou. So all these guys I could have pulled the trigger with last week, I can't. So you know what that means?
Yep.
It's in by default.
Yeah, look, I think it's better, yeah.
Well,
But the other one as well, you talked about earlier, Taylor May. I think he's totally worth a shout as well.
yeah,
If you're looking for somebody in draft per se, I'd probably put a waiver on him.
yeah.
He looked awesome.
Who would you prefer in Classic? If you had to make the trade,
Mhm.
Garrick out, okay, Tuapolotu or Tylan May?
I would say, I think I have to say Taylor May. Honestly, it's only because of the fixtures. Like both of them have two good games, but I think the other major thing is just the risk of injury. Really, like Tuapolotu, he needs at least 2 tries to get 100. Last week you saw Taylor May. He just scored only 1 try, but I think he did have it. Maybe he had a try assist or not. But it's just all the other things. The line breaks he gets, all the tackle busts that he get, and he scored 101. So therefore, if you're going to get this, this deep into the pods, you may as well go for the more potty of the two pods.
The Podfather.
Yeah.
That's funny. If you're a Herbie owner, would you just risk it and hope he pays around 27?
Yeah, sure. I look, somebody we didn't talk about so far actually. That is Teamless Tuesday relevant that we just remembered. Keon Kalamatangi, he's back this week, right? And he was supposed to be out for the entire season, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, so I'm on the NRL Physio Instagram feed, like the live feed that he does, and he said it's a return to play for 5 weeks for Keon's syndesmosis injury. So apparently that's really, really quick. So it's normally like 6 to 8 weeks. And the fastest ever is 4 weeks return. So 5 weeks for him, that's really impressive. My reason why I think he's trying to come back so fast is probably for the like the Tri-Nations that they do at the end of the year and wants to play for Tonga. That would be my assumption.
Yeah, my assumption was simply that they just didn't want to win the wooden spoon, really, and they wanted to make sure, do it for Wayne, really. But I'll quickly talk on Keon. For anybody who's held on for the last few rounds, well done. You reap the rewards now. He's going to be a massive pod. I don't think that he's starting, but I don't think he plays the 80 just because he's probably not as match fit as he was previously.
No.
But he's jagged a few tries the last few, this year. And if he jags a try, he's scoring 90, even probably triple digits, really. And probably I'd say in the same way, if you've held Herbie for this long and you can get 18 this week, then I'd probably consider just holding him and then make that final trade in round 27. Yeah, there's no harm in doing that, really. And if he comes back,
Imagine if he comes back around 27, no one has any trades left, and then pod Herbie Farmworth. Like, that could be absolutely a huge game changer. Like, imagine VC Herbie Farmworth around 27, everyone's rested. He could pop off, get 140 points, and then bang, you're climbing.
Yeah, and especially they'll be playing Canberra, who will 100%. They've pretty much clinched the minor premiership. They're gonna they're gonna just rest literally everybody. And it could be massive. So that's the other thing. If you're Jermaine Osaka holder, or you're thinking about Jake Averillo or Hammer, who we talked about, 100%. They're all worth smoky buys. At this late stage of the season.
Yep. I'm just having a quick look here. So, Tuivasa-Sheck's also a guy we've sort of briefly mentioned. We got love for Tuivasa-Sheck, obviously versing the Titans this week, and Titans are bloody woeful, unfortunately, as my team. But Titans, Parramatta, Manly, pretty juicy draw. Don't know what's happening with their halves, Like, Tamari Martin's been named on the bench, but there could be a late switch with Tanner Boyd. If Tamari Martin's starting, I'm probably more keen on that. I think Tanner Boyd's just too conservative. What are your thoughts on RTS?
I said earlier that I think he's the second best trade in this week behind Adam Dewey, as a Ruben Garrick replacement. He hasn't gone massive. He hasn't scored 100 at all this season, which is insane as a winger, really. And he's not scoring doubles or triples, but he's got good base. He's been basing 40, and then being base plus power, he's been averaging 50. Against the Bulldogs 2 weeks ago when it was just absolute pissing down with rain. The one where you bought Tamari Marte in your draft. I would scratch that game, but it's just, and even then, and as a result, he's due, I think. And let's say if you don't want him, I'm just also going to quickly segue as well, again, on any of the other New Zealand Warrior backline. Adam Pompey, often a lot of times when the ball doesn't make it out to RTS, it goes to Adam Pompey and he scores a try. I don't know if he's starting left or right, and the other person as well, like DWZ, he's been absolute trash this season, but he scored 100 a few weeks ago, and you never know, he could score 100 this week. Who knows? Who knows about this game? Yeah, this game is wild. It's just against the Titans. It's just you don't know which of the people in New Zealand which of the New Zealand Warriors are going to go big, but I think RTS is a good shout just based on the fixtures and again because of how bad the group was last week.
Oh, yeah. It's like, again, draft based. If you're in those finals, I would just be chasing. I'd be gutting out like good to very good players just to chase the Titans matchup, because regardless, even if the Titans win, they're going to be winning like 30 to 28. It's always going to be one of those high scoring affairs. They're not a good defensive team. And again, they're obviously decimated. Whether or not Keeney changes any of this and just strengthens their team overall and boost that morale, who knows? That's time to will tell. But yeah, I'd just be gutting out players. And again, TS, love that shout, mate. And Pompey, very underrated. And I think Rocco Berry as well will provide good service to guys like, I don't know what side he's going to be on, but either RTS or DWZ, he's just mentioned previously.
And Adam Pompey goal
Yeah,
kicks as
good shout.
well when, for example, Tanner Boyd is out as well. So, if they go massive, he could automatically just get, plus 20 20 plus points this week as well. But it's actually really interesting,
Yeah.
Ryan, that you brought up this point. Like, would you say that if you're in draft, right, and you're head to head, would you say that you said earlier that you probably think about picking up these really high upside players who could really be rocks and diamonds? Do you think that's a better option than, let's say, you had like maybe a player like, let's say, Tallis Duncan, right? Who I know there's two I reckon it's not a great example, but or let's say Bradman Best. He's going to score you 50 or 60. You know, but he probably based on this season, because of how the Knights are going, he probably won't score you 100 at any point. Would you trade him out for like a DWZ this week? Because you get that guarantee you get the 50 or 60 with Bradman Best.
I'm even looking like this is absolute wild take here. But I tell you what, Carraz has not been good. He has not been good. And he wasn't one of my highest draft picks. And I'm not saying I'm doing this. Could be just to try to throw you off. But if a guy like TS was there this week in draft, I would strongly consider dropping Carraz for RTS. It was like this a make or break. This is draft. I've got nothing left in. Like, I have to go all in essentially. That could be a move that you could make because obviously Melbourne Storm is so stout defensively. Best case scenario, he scores one try. I don't see him getting a double. Best case scenario, scores one try. Decent base and power, 50, 60 points. But a guy like RTS or another Rocks and Diamonds, as you just mentioned, DWZ, they could pop off and get
Yeah,
100.
actually, for
Potentially.
somebody like, actually, that actually makes a lot of sense when you use, Kira as an example. Yeah, yeah. I think I would back you with that actually. Yeah, it's a little bit like last week when I had Tallis Duncan. He kind of got moved to centre, and I was really concerned, and then he just scored a brace, and he just scored 108 points. And he saved my draft
Yeah.
season. It was insane. It was absolutely insane. Yeah, how like weird things like this can happen. Yeah.
Now, so we talked about guys who are holding, who we are looking at selling. Is there any guys of absolute interest? And again, everyone's paper thin, but like Dewey, definitely probably the guy if you can go for him. For me, Chris, personally, would you trade out Farmworth for Dewey this week?
Uh, if you if you have the trades, especially if you don't have 17, do it. Do it. I think it's worth it. I have Dewey. Not for I've tried to trade him out all season and he I just couldn't just because of all the injuries and all of a sudden I've lucked out and I feel like Michael Scott, they're like, like, hey, nice job getting Dewey. I'm like, oh yes. Yes, I have Dewey. But yes, I would say so because at this stage of season you just want guys that can go massive, and he's one of those guys that can go massive. But in terms of players to get, there's nobody in particular that I would say that it's a must get really this week, other than once again Reece Walsh and and
Yeah.
uh, and Sammy Walker. I would really think about those two guys.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'd be absolutely gutting your team to get Reece Walsh. I don't care what it
Yeah.
would be.
Some of the other really good smoke,
I
yeah.
would
Some of the
make
other
it.
smokies I've really thought about getting, maybe like for example, like a Tallis Duncan. He's just starting at center this week, so I don't think you can get him. Hudson Young, you know, he's one of them I'm scared about. He's had a week off recently, and then so he should be back, and should be coming in.
Panthers, but mate, it's going to be a big, big game. Again, it'd be, I think, very similar to the Melbourne Storm Panthers game. Low scoring sort of affair. Very nitty gritty. Probably going to be a slippery pill out there. Yeah, I just don't like those matchups like Panthers, Melbourne, Canberra, doggies, obviously defensively as well. Just would
Yeah,
be
actually, that's
avoiding.
fair. Actually, that you mentioned that. Yeah,
And even like I'm looking now, I'm obviously not going to do it, but like Hudson Young and Katoa, two guys who have got really tough matchups this week, potentially would look to get a guy like, I don't know, I might even bench Hudson Young, for example, and play a guy like Asako, which is absolute crazy talk. But again, against Manly, who knows?
yep. Well, to be honest, I wouldn't be technically against that at all. But you do want to be careful, sometimes with these guys as well. Like, Katoa last week, he was playing, Penrith. I'm sure some people would have benched him. He still popped off with 74 without a try. It was all just in base. So sometimes these guys who, when the going gets tough, tough get going, and Hudson Young is, pretty goddamn tough. So I expect him to excel really. So you never know. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me personally, Chris, and a lot of people have been in a similar position because if they held Keon, lucky you, who would you play? Keon against St. George, or would you play Aaron Clark, who's definitely been dropping significantly in recent weeks against the Titans?
I think you have to play Aaron Clark this week for several reasons.
Yeah,
The first one, obviously, playing his old team. There's that factor. You always want to do well against your mates.
100%.
And you want to show that. And it's hard for me to know, like, because sometimes it can be a case of, you have a laugh with your mates and you don't try as hard. But also, even if he didn't leave on such a good note, he's going, you guys didn't renew my contract. Let me show you what you're missing out on. But the other thing as well was that Jackson Ford, he's been suspended for the rest of the regular season, I think. So they're down. Dimitri Valmunga, I think he's starting this week. So if you need somebody in front row forward for your draft, head to head, he might be a good pickup. He has the ability to tackle bust a lot, and as a result, I think that he probably will play more extended minutes in a sense. Actually, no, that's a lie. If they just absolutely score 50 points, he won't be making any tackles. That's a good point. Yeah, but
I think it's a good point, though. The revenge tour for Aaron Clark. I think he's actually going to pop up. He's been notorious for cramping in the past 2 months. I think he's just going to be running on his hands. He's not going to want to come off the field.
Okay, yeah. But I would say that I think that he's a better shout than Keon, just because you don't know what's going to happen to Keon. There's always that risk of re-injury. You know what I'm saying? Like he could,
True.
he could just literally twist his syndesmosis again. Is that a thing? Or his ankle? Yeah. And then, and all of a sudden now you're in trouble a little bit. But I would say if you can play Keon as well, so long, I just don't think over Aaron Clark. If you can play Keon, I think go do it. It's going to be a big pod for players owners who own him.
Mm. Yeah, crazy how we're just on paper thin trying to field a team with flex position available, and all of a sudden these guys are coming back, and now I'm looking at my looping potential, and it's still good, but not ideal. Not ideal.
I think this week as well, it might be one of those weeks where you also just see how you go and see how you you play see how the first couple of games go, and then you make changes as needed. For example, if you don't only have one player that's actually playing on your reserves or in your bench this week, and let's say it's Keon and he goes off for 100, then you can knock out a couple of players or something like that, and then so that you can get his score or something like that. And if he doesn't play well, then you just keep things as it is, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah, crazy. I'm just having a look at my team now. Now, captaincy, I think that's pretty much all the players of relevance. And again, it's getting paper thin for some of these teams. Who do you think is the go-to this week? Some tough matchups.
Yeah. There's no obvious picks really, but lots of good matchups. If it was captaincy options, I'm gonna list 4 main captaincy options. Obviously, Teddy versus Para. It could be tricky because again, Para have been pretty good on their defense, but it's the Roosters and they just went 60 against Finns and then 30 odd against Doggies. The other one is Reece Walsh. I think he's probably the best option this week against Newcastle. He just looks consistent now. As in, I don't think you have to risk it at all anymore. He's not a risk anymore at this. Based on how he went last week and 2 weeks ago. Adam Dewey against the Cowboys. I don't think he's a bad shout. Although I don't know if he can score yet another try again. And then the other one obviously would be my former love, Drinky. He's the other option. Really. What are your thoughts? Anybody else that I've missed out on?
Mate, you've nailed it on the head for me. Vice captain Tedesco, C. Walsh. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, but yeah, you guys there's not really anyone jumping out to me. Tom Trebojevic, smoky VC, like that's pretty potty. I don't like the Melbourne Panthers, Canberra Bulldogs. I mean, like bloody hell, Friday night footy this week's gonna be absolutely popping off. But yeah, I think it's that Broncos matchup is definitely the most desirable. So if you got Reece Walsh or you haven't got Reece Walsh yet, gut your team, get him in, chuck an armband on him, and I think that Tedesco shout. He's just unreal. He's like LeBron James. He just gets better with age.
It's crazy. He's leading for the second time, in 2 years. He's top of the scorers list. I can't believe it. Yeah. My VC this week probably most likely will be Jaden Campbell against the Warriors. Even though we think that Warriors could absolutely smash the Titans, the Warriors have also been very leaky of themselves, and JC only takes a little bit. If he's on his day, he'll go massive, and then I don't have to think about it at all. But it's most likely at the moment it's Jaden Campbell VC to into a Teddy C.
I like that. And the Warriors versus the Gold Coast Titans at home. At home, I mean Seabus, and by home, I mean the Warriors essentially playing at home because the New Zealand folk in Southeast Queensland, they rally, and it's like, I'm not exaggerating, it's going to be like 65% Warriors, 35% Gold Coast Titans at Seabus. I reckon it's going to be like 20,000 plus at Seabus on the weekend. It's going to be really good. And actually, Adam's coming up for his 30th. And he'll be there as well.
Luckily, the Titans get calls from the refs, so hopefully, and hopefully no trainers walk in front of Jaden Campbell this week. Because if I'm as a VC,
imagine, yeah, mate. Jaden Campbell, I didn't even think about him, but yeah, that's a great chat. But tell you what, some love for Brimson too. Like he's been absolutely killing it. Obviously, very attack reliant, but got to give some love where love is due. He's been very, very consistent in the past probably month or so.
Yeah, no, he's been really, really good. He's in my draft head-to-head as well, and I'm really, really glad for him. And I'm very pleased that he's kept his spot at fullback. Last week he copped some criticism because he got caught out in the under front line a lot, and that led to Nicko's first try where he just chipped the ball over the top and then they just scored. He was nowhere to be seen. But I don't think that one bad game makes a season, and I think he deserves to retain his fullback spot. And as a result, that's why I think Kinney's on 14. But if he ends up starting, he's a very close watch to perhaps trying to play him as an AE as well. That's Keanu Kinney. Yeah.
Yep, definitely agree. Is there anything else you want to say, Chris? Before
no,
we wrap this one
I
up?
just hope everybody has, another huge score, for around 25. Drinky. Please don't score big. Please don't make me regret it more. I don't know. It still hurts. I don't understand, Ryan. It's just a game. It's just a game. But
I understand, Chris. I understand. The Dylan Edwards 1 month ago when he got popped off and I had the captaincy on him, I understand.
I'm grumpy. I'm grumpy like you, man.
I'll tell you, man, it hurts. It's still stinging. But as long as someone pops off for you this week, and actually, I don't want that to happen. Hope you do shit, Jaden Campbell. Love you. XO.
That's a true comment.
That's Fantasy Files. Episode 17, Chris. Who would have thought 17 weeks doing this, which is absolutely crazy. It's been an absolute adventure and loving all the engagement that you guys are coming through now. All these other segments that we're bringing in as well, we're introducing, which is really, really good. You guys are really loving that engagement. Again, the slanders and the banters, and you're taking a few jabs at me, which I'm kind of liking, low key, but it's good. We're loving it. Again, you got anything for Chris? Let us know. I also want to give a shout out to Gaz because Gary's currently on his honeymoon in Greece, and I just get a random message this morning. He's like, "Oh, Ryan, just to let you know that I've done a Latrell Mitchell's Physio Corner mini pod." I'm like, "What's this, Gary? You're on holidays. Enjoy yourself." But that's also on the channel, guys. So go check out that. It's a little 5-minute short clip of Gaz talking about Latrell. That's on our all our streaming platforms. You name it, we're on it. You know the drill, guys. Like, share, subscribe. Really helps the algorithm. Again, anything for Chris, anything for top tier God Adam. Don't know where Jake's been. Jake's been in a hole in New Zealand, but he's finally emerged. And Laura is really bad at SuperCoach, so that's all good.
Thanks for listening to Tackles and Tinnies.
We'll end it there. Thanks, guys.